Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far, and welcome to episode 18 of the Breaking Point podcast. Another phenomenal weekend of Call of Duty. This past major was probably the best one that we have had so far this season, and joined of course by a very special guest, especially this week because Austin EasyMac and Lionman has walked away with the championship all on his own back, of course, with the Atlanta FaZe guys getting the W. Fantastic stuff, of course. We'll dive into all the drama of another incredible weekend here in just a couple of minutes time. First of all, just wanted to thank all of you guys for the support as of late on the channel, on the Spotify. All that stuff has been honestly incredible stuff. Ratings on the Spotify always really helps out the channel as well. So if you'd like to help us out, all that good stuff really does support. So let's dive in. Austin, how are you doing? Congratulations on the victory. Phenomenal performance after, well, obviously dominating stage one, coming into stage two, difficult time in the grand finals against Ultra, now back where you guys belong on top of the world. Just a phenomenal performance all round. Didn't make it easy for yourselves after that loss to New York we'll dive into, but yeah, congrats.
Yeah, was a good tourney run. Just enjoying our one off day we have this week before we're back at it tomorrow.
Absolutely right, because there's going to be changes. I didn't really have this written down in the notes, but I guess standoffs coming in a few days. We've got supposedly some weapon patch tuning updates going on as well. So you guys are going to be right back into the thick of it to figure out what works. I guess playing on standoff as soon as you can, because from my expectation, like the league, I guess needs some time to make the map set changes, and the major or the stage four only starts on the 27th. So you guys realistically only have a few days to figure out what works and what you want to change. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I think the patch comes in on Thursday, right?
Yeah.
So by the end of Thursday, like that's when everyone's going to be pretty much grinding really hard to learn the new map set. So yeah, you're right back at it for stage four right away.
Absolutely. Do you have a good idea what the map set's going to be? Like, do you think standoffs? We did talk about how it should work for control. Like, what map do you think is going to go for search, for example? Because there's been a lot of discussion between Checkmate and Miami. Because people, obviously, you guys are liking Checkmate right now. Miami not so much. Maybe Miami's the better search and destroy map on paper. But I can certainly see a world in which Checkmate is staying here.
Hi, yeah. So I don't really know for hardpoint. It's going to be difficult to say which one goes. Because Checkmate honestly works pretty for hardpoint. And I think a lot of teams don't like Apocalypse, so I feel like that's probably go.
Yeah.
For S&D, it's kind of tricky because honestly, Checkmate and Miami are not good S&D maps at all. Checkmate, I mean, usually the better team wins because it's just straight up gunfights inside the plane, but it's still like really boring S&D usually, and you can usually call like what's going to happen. Whereas Miami is a lot of like timing based and a lot of just really weird rounds play out because it's such a large map and there's so many different angles to clear out and mid map's kind of a mess. But it has a better layout, I guess, because you can use both bombs. Both of them are really just like C tier, D tier, like S&D maps. So it's kind of tough to decide. It's probably gonna be really split between those two. And for control, I mean, I think more teams are gonna be leaning towards Checkmate to go. I don't know because Garrison was kind of, if you go back and look, the Garrison offensive rounds, there wasn't as many, like, we call them demon traps, like when you get really pinned back into your base.
Sure, yeah.
There wasn't as many this past stage. So I think offense I think his teams are learning, and with the plat now being included in the radio tank hill, I think it opened up a lot of like avenues for offensive teams to win rounds. So I feel like that map might stay. I also don't know if there's going to be any more maps other than standoff coming in. So maybe there's like another 6v6 map that works in a one of the three modes, and we might see it change. But we're kind of getting late in the season.
Yeah, I kind of think that it will just stay how it is after this for the rest of the season. Maybe like if the pros realized, okay, maybe we should have, let's say, got rid of Miami instead of Checkmate or whatever they decided to do. Maybe that gets swapped for stage 5 or something. But I don't think we might be seeing any more maps after this. But regardless, it's exciting stuff. It's always exciting stuff here following competitive Call of Duty. What a phenomenal major. Let's dive into things. We'll begin in the lower bracket where it kicked off on the Thursday. Going to be going through, of course, the majority of teams here, some of which had great weekends, some of which looked pretty tragic. Let's not beat around the bush. We're going to discuss our power rankings towards the end of the episode. And I think the power rankings are super interesting right now because it seems like there's an incredibly clear-cut top bunch. And then after that, it's a bit of a mess in the middle of the pack. Let's just put it like that. So The first match of the weekend, or pretty much up there, was London. Wanted to talk about this team because, of course, they beat Paris pretty comfortably. They went 3-1. Then they didn't. Well, I don't know about destroyed Minnesota, but it wasn't particularly close. A 3-0 against Rokkr was very impressive for London. They've been looking much improved, but then they get 3-0 by Los Angeles Thieves. So. And then there's been some weird rumors coming out that like Zaptius is no longer going to be there, like Alex or Afro is getting over. I think it'd be great to see Afro find his way into this team because let's not forget, right, that the European region these last couple of years, the discussion has been, oh yeah, Hydra and Afro, like two of the shining stars in the AM scene. Nasty, of course, also deserves a mention, but those guys have certainly been at the top of people's minds, and we see what Hydra's doing right now. So I'd be very excited to see him get his opportunity on London. At the same time, they have obviously been improving quite significantly. Their teamwork looked awesome. Paulex was great in search this weekend. But yeah, what do you think these guys should do, Austin? Because at the same time, they had a good weekend. If they'd have got the win against Los Angeles Thieves, they'd have found themselves in, honestly, I think a really nice spot to try and make a run to still get to the World Championship. But right now, they picked up a few points, but they're still down here on only 50 points behind the 8th place team, which is the Mutineers. So it's still not easy despite their improvements.
Yeah, I think they should stick, honestly. There's a lot more improvement with Zap, and they kind of went from not competitive in many series to actually kind of a threat in the respawns. So I personally think their SMG duo is like one of like the rattiest, like kind of is like they're always in like an off angle. They're always doing something that's just annoying. And Paul and Shawnee have been done pretty well with on the AR backline. So I think that you stick, you just keep building up chemistry because, there's not too much talent outside of, in the challengers pool. It's kind of hard unless you're getting European players over, which I don't know if that's possible yet or not. So if they can't get like a zero or zero or an Afro over here, I think you stick with what you got right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice to see this team being competitive, man. It's fun when teams are competitive, and it's kind of funny. We talk about how competitive the league is. That certainly is the case. But some of these teams do not have the easiest time, it seems, regardless of what they do. And it's nice to see London at least breaking away from the very bottom tier of teams. It wasn't long ago they're right at the bottom of the league. Now it seems like they're, maybe even breaching top 8 teams in terms of that territory, which is pretty cool to see. And on the other side, Paris they obviously lose 3-1. I guess we can touch on Paris and Seattle together, given they only lost one series this major. Not too much to say. On the Seattle side, it's just a shambles. I mean, they didn't win a single series this stage. That's tough. I mean, 0-5 in groups, obviously lose straight away at the major as well. They haven't clearly won a series since stage 2. The Decimate change hasn't really seemed to make too much difference for them. Of course, this series again lost to LAG, all teams to lose to, especially in the fashion they did in the respawns. Like they won the search, right, and then they won they lost all the respawns, which is like. You cannot be, if there's one team in the league you cannot be losing like that to, it's LAG, right? Because like LAG, you're not expecting them to win 2 respawns in a series, really, let alone 3. So I don't really know what's going on with Seattle. Paris, on the other hand, they, I don't know. Both of these teams just find themselves in a tough spot. I think they're probably doomed not to make champs at this point, whatever happens.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like the bottom 4 teams right now that are not in the top 8, I feel like that's probably going to be the bottom 4 teams because right now I think Florida's kind of improving and Minnesota, with the latest change that they just made, kind of foreshadowing here, but with the change they just made, I feel like both of those teams are just going to continue to grow. And right now there's a 50-point difference between the 7th seed and the 9, and 30 points between 8 and 9. So I feel like right now, like Seattle is, unless they make a huge run at Major 4, I feel like they're kind of in deep trouble.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I was watching some of these series on the Saturday, the Sunday especially, and seeing the level that some of these teams were bringing was like, there's just no chance that Seattle can compete with that, or some of these teams can compete with that on a consistent basis, at least how they're looking right now. So yeah, coin flip league all you like, but at the end of the day, the results here weren't a surprise this weekend. And well, let's move on to talk about Minnesota, given the foreshadowing just did come through. They do decide to make a change. They get absolutely bopped by London, and they've not been looking great. It's really interesting, right? We talked about honeymoon periods. This team has probably had the biggest honeymoon period of any team in recent memory. I mean, when they first formed, they were godlike. They took down OpTic 3-0. They beat who else? They beat Dallas, of course. I don't know if they beat you guys or I don't know. They had so many great series when they first formed. It was super competitive. Of course, they had a great result at the last major as well. But well, destroyed by London here, and they decide to make the decision to bench aCuRacy and bring MajorManiak into the starting team. Interesting change, just because this was the change that we talked about that maybe they should make when they initially made this move for Stanley, right? That was the whole discussion.
Mhm.
Should they have kept aCuRacy or should they have kept MajorManiak instead? aCuRacy, of course, with Ramadan and everything going on, hasn't, of course, had the easiest time personally this last month or so. Obviously, he brings a lot to a team outside of just the slaying, but the slaying obviously hasn't been there, right? I think statistically, I don't know if you have the stats, but I think someone said maybe a 0.94 in the season or something, not where you want to be as a main AR. And they're probably looking at this team and thinking, looking at some of the best teams in the game with everyone playing out of their minds, we just need some of that in our team. And clearly, I think it's time to make a change for Rokkr if they want a chance to win champs. At the same time, very interesting, given that attach and aCuRacy have been a duo for quite a while now. Well, certainly interesting the way this went down, I think, Austin.
Yeah, in this past stage, aCuRacy had a 0.88. He had a 0.65 in S&D, and he had a 0.8 in hardpoint. Very lackluster for like a main AR, especially in the current meta, where the Krieg is like king right now. You definitely don't want your hardpoint KD to be a 0.84, and even Priesta on the second Krieg, they only had a 0.99 there. So it's not like their Kriegs just went frying, which a lot of these teams, you see that for one or both of their ARs. Like for us, obviously, Alec had a 1.18. There was guys like Octane that really improved. Insight with a 1.11. So there's a lot of main ARs out there, even Skyz with a 1.1, who just improved dramatically. And then I kind of feel bad. Lamar was fasting for I think a month or a couple weeks. So obviously that doesn't help.
13th to like May the 12th or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, tough.
So that obviously doesn't help, but like he was very lackluster. And on the other side of the coin, Mike, who just competed in MajorManiak, who just competed in the Elite and in the Open, has done like very, very well. He had a 1.07 in the Elite with the UT crew, and he was the more like aggressive AR. He had a 1.2 adjusted KD because he had a 1.6 in S&D, and he had a 1.2 in control. I think that's a major improvement. When you're looking at how you want to build a team, you either got to target hardpoint or S&D, because obviously both of those appear twice in a series. So you got to pick one or the other to be really, really good at. And I think now they're going to be probably leaning towards S&D because Mike is an S&D star. You have Priesta, great S&D player. You got Attach, great S&D player. And Standy has been just pretty well across all modes. So I think this is the right move for right now to move in the right direction overall.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they had to make a change like this, and it makes sense the one they decide to make with MajorManiak coming back in off the bench. Obviously, his Search and Destroy is a massive plus, and I think also his playstyle within this team, like it was kind of the thing we said at the start of the season when they did have aCuRacy and MajorManiak. It was like, why is this team built to be so slow? Because Attach is hardly a quick player. And now it feels like with MajorManiak, you probably can play at a slightly faster pace, which should help you in the respawns. Whereas you see all these top teams right now are flying around the map, with abandon. So I think it'll have them a step in the right direction. I did want to touch on the question of what exactly is next for aCuRacy, because if the league doesn't expand, there's a lot of great ARs out there. Like, let's not beat around the bush. You've got Method sitting on the bench. You've now got aCuRacy sitting on the bench. You've got Slasher sitting on the bench. You've got potentially other changes to be made. I don't really know what's going to happen over these coming days. You've got Gravity, of course, sitting there in the amateur scene, ready to get picked up when the opportunity arises. And aCuRacy and Attach have always been that duo the last couple of seasons. You always felt like aCuRacy would find a spot somewhere because Attach was getting a spot somewhere. Maybe if that's not a thing anymore, I don't know what's next for aCuRacy, right? It's tough to say that without expansion, he's easily going to get back into any of these teams.
Yeah, so I still think Lamar has his place in the league, whether it's on, because like right now the bottom half of the league, there could be main AR swaps that could improve them, could maybe not. I think Lamar's a really good leader, so if he's not a main AR on one of the rosters next year, he could easily be a coach who, would help out loads fundamentally for a lot of these teams. I do think the notion of having like a main AR and then like a flex is kind of like outdated. I do think pretty much right now what you have is a fast AR and a slow AR. So if one of like what you see in Florida basically is you have Awakening and Skyz. Like both of those players are AR players and they could be considered main AR players, but one of them is just faster than the other, and that's how they play off of each other and they split their responsibilities. So I could see accuracy teaming up with like on any one of these teams, and like as long as one player becomes the faster one, like even on LAT, like right now, Draza is technically the slower AR, and Kenny has been flying on the main, and he's considered the main
Yeah, the
AR by
main,
most
yeah.
people. But in reality, he didn't change his playstyle at all from when he was a flex. He was always running the Krieg, and now he's just got this title main AR, even though he's doing the same stuff he was before. So, and Draza's like basically been doing the main AR duties, but with the flex tag. So it's like kind of,
Make any
I
sense.
think it's
I
outdated.
completely agree.
Yeah. So like Lamar could duo up with any of these main ARs in the league, and as long as one of them just speeds up a little bit, it could work. So he's definitely got avenues to join other franchises, other rosters in the future.
Yeah, I think that's true. I just don't see how likely it is. And at the same time, like whoever he partners up with, whoever's building that team has to know that faster AR is going to be an absolute unit, right? Like you're going to need an
Mhm.
Awakening or a Kenny or one of these type of guys to drop massive numbers to make it work. It still can work. I mean, they won a championship last year on the Subliners team. So it
Mhm.
can still happen. It's just, I mean, it's a tough spot for a number of these veterans that have been around the scene for such a long time that are finding themselves on the bench. But that's just how the league is nowadays. And well, speaking, you did mention Florida right there. I think before we talk about Florida, let's just discuss Los Angeles Thieves because they're in a very interesting spot actually. Because they come into this weekend. Of course, they make the Huke change, understandably so, no doubt about that. You're going to bring in Huke. He had his moments this weekend, especially up against London. I mean, he had some spectacular plays on that Garrison Arp win, especially. But okay, the first series they played, they lose to Florida. And Florida are a weird team, right? Like sometimes they look great, sometimes they don't look good at all. That is just how it is with this team. We can discuss them in a second. But Thieves losing here in the winners bracket, bit of a surprise to me. Then they go down to losers, win one game before getting absolutely bodied by Toronto. We've got to talk about this 250 to 14. Yes, Kenny was talking about the whole whatever issues they were having, server issues, whatever. That was perfect COD from Ultra. There's no other way to put it. The way they spun together those rotations was absolutely majestic. The communication as well. Like I just love hearing Bance in the comms when he's making fantastic small talk, telling his team where to look, what he's looking at, and holding down the rotations as they did. That was just humiliating, right? Like, if I'm Thieves and I'm getting memed on for getting 14 points in a hardpoint, that is the lowest hardpoint score we've seen in at least 5 years, if not like
100%.
6, 7, 8 years or something. Like I think there was
It's
a
when the pub
250 to like
sponsors.
8. Yeah, legit, right? They were playing
Yeah.
pubs on them. Like, what was going on? They just queued up league play, and I think even if that 4-man team queued up league play, then the other team might get more than 14 points. I don't know, get some scrap time, right? Crazy scenes. So, and of course they go on to lose the series after actually dominating the Miami Search, which is a bit strange. But the rest of it was again very convincing. Toronto make the ultimate 100-point club by 100-point clubbing them over both hard points combined. And that's, of course, where they finish out the tournament right then and there after losing that Checkmate Hardpoint to Toronto, where they've been really good on Checkmate Hardpoint. So, strange for Thieves. I don't know if you think they should consider something because they've not been they've not been well, they've been very eager to make changes. Let's just put it that way. Whenever something isn't going right, they pull the trigger and something changes. And obviously, Huke's going to be in the team. I would be building around Huke and Kenny for the next however many years I get the opportunity to. But there was a question when initially they brought in Huke. Okay, you've got Venom, you've got TJ. Who should have been the one to go? Venom didn't have the greatest weekend. Maybe you think, all right, let's try TJ in for the start of stage 4 and see if that helps our team move in the right direction. Because clearly this weekend, not the result they wanted. I think that, the placing is acceptable, but, just the fashion in which they lost was pretty ugly.
Yeah. Honestly, like I really like the duo of Draza and Kenny, just the way they play off of each other. I think still they're like the SMG issues are kind of like concerning. I know Huke is like a generational talent. He's probably one of the most gifted Call of Duty players. Like he's up there, but it's just some questionable plays I'm seeing that like it it hurts them in the long run. Like there'll just be a play where they just make shortcuts or incorrect routes, and then it impacts them to like not hold a full 60, and they start losing points here or there. And I don't know what it is with Huke and Venom. I just think they need just a little bit more time to get synced up. Uh, I think Venom, I think really highly of, but he's also had his struggles throughout the stage. He finished with a .84. He had a .79 in hard point and a .76 in S&D. So there is some struggles there. I think he should improve with Hoog. So I just think it's a little bit of a long-term project. They just have to sync up, work better, and just keep at it, because they only did just make this change. What was it, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks?
Pretty much, yeah.
So they're fairly new, but it is a little bit concerning that you lost to Toronto the way you did, that you lost to Florida the way you did. So there are some red flags.
I think there's questions again about Huke, to be honest. I think it's getting really interesting because we've seen in every season before last year where they won the World Championship, the question was always around Huke. Like everyone said this guy's overrated, right? Everyone in the community used to say Huke was overrated, apart from the pros. The pros would be like, this kid's absolutely unbelievable. I don't know what the fans are talking about. But the fans would always say he was overrated because he never got the results with great teams. World War II, Envy, disaster. Goes to, same thing in Black Ops 4, goes to Splice, doesn't work. Then finally in Modern Warfare, he kind of proves that, okay, yes, not only is he unbelievable at the game, but he also can win championships and did the one with the World Championship, right? But, okay, at the time, he was alongside Clayster. We know what Clayster does to these players. As you're saying right there's some questionable plays on the map. There isn't a clear leadership figure on this Los Angeles Thieves team. Does Huke need someone? Does he literally need Clayster to be, to actually be on a team that could win championships, right? Because the talent's there, the plays are questionable. Every team he's been on that wasn't Dallas Empire last season hasn't really had success. I think he's phenomenal, but I'm just saying that the storyline is building up once again. If Thieves continue to underperform, if they continue to look worse than they did when they had TJ, then there's some really interesting questions about Huke, right? Especially with the cash that's been paid. Of course, he has no doubt the talent to win championships and be that type of player. That's why Thieves got him. But they've really got to think about what team do they have to build around him to actually get the best out of him, because we've really only seen the best out of him and on winning teams with Clayster and Crimsix, of course, but we've kind of seen what Crimsix has done with their team so far this season. Maybe hasn't been so pretty, right? There's some questions about that as well. So I don't know, interesting. I just thought it's a storyline I'd mention, and of course, there's so many great storylines going on right now. We can touch on Florida real quick. Actually, of course, they get kind of destroyed by OpTic to finish off their tournament. But yeah, beating Thieves looked pretty good. But okay, they get absolutely bodied by New York, and then they lose to OpTic as well in 6 maps in a row. They lost right here. Not pretty. And well, we saw a number of teams having not pretty results this weekend. Do you think Florida should do anything, right? Because they're in a spot where they're going to make it to champs probably, but it's not guaranteed by any means. They're in the 8th spot. They have a little bit of a buffer, but it's not comfortable. And they sit here in a spot where Havoc, Slacked basically put up the same stats. Neptune's actually been improving, but still, Awakening and Skyz, you cannot seem to get consistent stuff out of them in these big series against the top teams. If you want to actually win the World Championship, I just can't see this team doing it, Austin.
Yeah, I think they have a lot of talent, and I just think they're struggling with playing 100% fundamentally correct and like taking advantage of other team's mistakes, if that makes sense. So, but I think maybe they're one roster change away from being like top tier, but like right now they can still compete with like almost any other team. I know they've been trialing an assistant coach and like bringing in more people to help. Who?
Will it? Is that right?
I think it was.
Yeah.
But they brought in an assistant coach, which I think is a fantastic thing to do. Definitely invest into a coaching staff. It only helps take pressure off of the head coach and lets you see different perspectives and different voices like talking, which helps more than you would think. So I think with that, they might, be able to sharpen up around sharpen the edges around playing correctly on certain, like being able to chain hills correctly, being able to hold the full 60s instead of giving up like 15 seconds. So I feel like they're definitely going to get better as the season goes along and continue to grow. But perhaps maybe like one roster change away, maybe. But I think they still have enough talent to compete with every team there is right now.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Like on their day, they can mix it up, but it's just consistency is key, right? And they, sometimes you think, right, if you've got an inconsistency, maybe they can put together a run at a major or something and win like 3 on the bounce, but even then, they still can't seem to be able to do that. Speaking of teams that may well need changes, Dallas Empire, we got to talk about them. They got bodied this weekend. They didn't even win a map on the weekend. I didn't actually mention that when I made the video earlier today, but looking back at it now, they got 3-0'd by you guys right at the start. Wasn't particularly close. Then they go down to losers and they get 3-0'd by OpTic in again, pretty convincing fashion. Honestly, Shotzzy has been the only bright spark for this team. He has still been putting up numbers in the respawns. I mean, the eye test will tell you this guy's out of control. The plays he's making in Search and Destroy as well. Without a doubt, the best player on their team right now. The whole Illy on the SMG thing has clearly not been working. The statistics don't back it up by any means. He's had a very tough season so far. Fellow comes into the team not expected to put up numbers, but at the same time, if you've got Krim as your main AR also not doing great, then it really is just Shotzzy leading from the front and everyone else having a very difficult time. Destroyed on the weekends. This is, of course, your stage 1 runner-up. Stage 2, third places, and now they finish outside of the top 4. They finish top 8 here for the first time in their history as an organization. Last year, they came top 4 at every event minimum. This year, so far, they came top 4, of course, at every event minimum. Here, they've finished outside the top 4 for the first time, and since they made this Huke change, they've lost, I think, 4 series in a 3-0 fashion, which is way more than they had before they made this change. Which, okay, we talked about it last time. We did not think this team could win a championship, let alone the world championship with this current roster. So, okay, you're Dallas, you're looking at this team and you have no backup plan and you're thinking, what the hell do we even attempt to do here? Is it possible you make a trade with some other team? Do you think this team can actually figure it out? I basically don't. I guess I said that with London a few weeks ago and they've looked a bit better, but, I just don't see it personally. And then you're looking at some other teams. We did mention Florida. I was thinking, okay, is there a world in which they somehow snag Awakening? Maybe, Florida think that Skyz and Awakening as a duo isn't really going to work. If I'm Florida, I certainly don't want to get rid of Awakening. But if Dallas offer me a load of that Huke money, then yeah, maybe I have to consider it. And then, okay, so Dallas get Awakening in. And then, okay, Criminal Awakening on the AR. I don't know. I'm just trying to think how it could possibly work. But even then, if the SMGs are still as they are right now, with Illy dropping, I don't know what the numbers are, I'm sure you can dive into them then, this team just cannot compete with the top dogs the way they're playing.
Yeah, I think they're in the unbelievably tough spot right now. For the stage, Crimsix finished with a 0.88, Fellow with a 0.87, and Illy with a 0.84, and then Shotzzy had a 0.98. And then at the major, I know they only played 2 matches against us in Chicago, but Crimsix had a 0.78, Fellow had a 0.69, Illy had a 0.64, and Shotzzy had a 0.94. So
it's brutal.
Yeah, it's really tough. I don't know if the Illy experiment on the SMG is working 100%. I know he kind of got thrust into the middle of a stage, so maybe another stage to see if this experiment is working, but I thought it was very concerning that if I was to ask you what do you think Illy's strongest mode is, most people would say S&D, where that's where he came from. Yeah. But he has a 0.73 in S&D right now, and he has a 0.75 in control. And I just feel like he's kind of struggling to find his footing, find like being comfortable on the map. And I think that's extremely important to be comfortable and confident on the map, because that usually tends to you playing with just more confidence and correctly and challenging stuff with your teammates. So if he's not 100% there, I don't know. I don't know, because like obviously Fellow is not there to put up 1.2s, but he also didn't perform 100% great. And when you have Illy also struggling, it's like, where do you find that star power next to Shotzzy? Because Shotzzy performed pretty well, but he can't just be a one-man show. So it's really hard to solve this puzzle of what Dallas should do. And time's ticking, because I believe they only have like a month and a half to figure it out before like stage 5 is just you're locked in. So it's going to be probably really eventful, 6 weeks for them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you make a great point about Illy, and I don't know what's going on there, because like he's so good at search, obviously, but yet I think it must be like some confidence thing, right? Where It was like Dashy a couple of weeks ago. It really felt like, he was going into matches, a lot of pressure on his back. And I'm sure it does get to these guys there. They've been underperforming. They're going into a match. They feel like they have to perform. They get gunned off the opening, rotation, and they're like, they get in their own
You
head.
just get in your
and,
head.
And it just keeps going down that route. And I think that's it happened to Bance, right? Like Bance is in
100%.
exactly the same spot where he was, really in his own head thinking he might even retire. And now, he revitalized after a couple of good series. It can happen. The question is, does it happen for Illy on this team? Because I feel like last year, I don't know, I feel like I'm gassing up Clay all the time, but Clay has this facet of his personality where if someone's underperforming on the team, he's gonna be that guy that gets them on the right track and says, okay, look, I've been there before, these are the issues that I've had. I don't know if Krim has that element of his leadership on a team where he can help snap someone out of a slump like that. And I think that might be where the issues arise for this team, because there's no doubt the talent is there on Illy, and it'd be a shame to see him not be in the league or something. I think he could be phenomenal on another team. I'm a big fan of his communication, his play style, but especially the fact that he hasn't been putting it together in Search. That just shows me that something around the way this team is organized must be wrong, because I feel like if you just let Illy on a leash, off the leash even, he would just run around popping two pieces. But whatever they're doing with him, maybe he feels somewhat restricted. I feel like often I see him sitting in corners and I don't know, it seems somewhat strange the way they're playing. Feels like they're somewhat scared. They feel like OpTic from a couple of weeks ago, or a few days ago, to be honest, before this major. You have something to say, Austin?
Yeah, I bet you they're really angry that New York's doing well right now, because honestly, traditionally, I think Crimsix has been the best when he's the second AR, the more aggressive AR. Think of World War II. Think of, even Black Ops 4. He was really good on the Maddox when he ran it. If New York wasn't doing well, finding a way to get Clayster to be the main, the slower AR, and Crimsix to be that,
Wow.
that pick up the pace, and then kind of figure it out from there. I mean, that could have worked. But I feel like now that New York's playing so well, I don't think there's a chance you get Clay off of that. But that could have been a solution in the past.
Yeah, interesting idea. I mean, Clay isn't going anywhere for sure. He wants to stay there for the rest of his career.
Chance.
Especially out there playing. And we'll leave the Dallas question because I'm sure that's going to recur over the coming weeks. There's going to be discussions on that. Let's talk about OpTic Chicago, because they had a phenomenal bounce back weekend here. They, as you said last week, starting from the losers bracket could be the greatest thing for them. They lose the game one. That was their sixth hardpoint loss in a row going up to that point. So this is the dichotomy between how they were looking. And then they go into game two. They clutch up in a round 11. That finally they managed to clutch up in a round 11. Honestly, I'm pretty sure they were up 5-3 in the Moscow Search again. Almost threw it away. There were some very questionable rounds. OpTic get over the line, and then they win the next two. So okay, they beat LAG. Obviously, they had to win. If they'd have lost this series, I don't know what would have happened here. Maybe they just stick it anyway. But it could have been. Wouldn't have been pretty. Let's just say. They do win it. They go on to the next day. They dominate Dallas in that 3-0. Then they go up against Florida later in the day as well, beat them 3-0 as well. And then they take the first map up against Toronto in an incredible series that was on the Sunday. They went game 5, round 11. And actually, that was, that was, of course, on the Sunday. And that was a 10-map win streak for them. So that's incredible. Dashy had, obviously, against Dallas, some ridiculous stats. He seemed to be back on his form. Every player on OpTic really came to play this weekend, and it was great to see. It's great for Call of Duty. The viewership was absolutely booming. Of course, they do lose in the end to Toronto in what was a ridiculous series. They probably should have won it in the game 5. I mean, there was a lot of rounds that didn't go their way, that arguably it should have done. Some mistakes coming back in again in their search and destroys. But Toronto just seemed to have this ice in game 5. It's against a team that isn't Atlanta FaZe. What are your thoughts on the weekend, Austin, for OpTic? Because, I mean, phenomenal bounce back from them. As I say, it's great for COD that OpTic are doing well. It creates way more storylines, great for viewership. And it's just good to see this organization back where it belongs, really, on a championship Sunday, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I really did think going to losers bracket was the best thing for them, because they could chain together, a bunch of these matches and gain confidence. And now I feel like you leave this weekend very positive. I feel like going map 5 or round 11 against Toronto Ultra, who I think are the second best team in the league, and taking them that far in S&D, which I think they're the most put together S&D team. I think they're ridiculous. So there's so many positives to take away from this weekend that I mean, I think you hold your head high and you have to grow from this. So I feel like this is a great foundation to enter the second half of the season and keep on it on like a high note. So definitely think they performed to where like people thought they were going to be. They have so much talent. There's no reason for them to be struggling against some of these lower teams. So for them to finally get out of that funk, gain some confidence back, and finally reach some of their potential, it's great to see, honestly.
Yeah, it really does create some phenomenal storylines for the rest, right? Because when they were looking awful, and let's not beat around the bush, they were looking awful like not long ago at all. But it's confidence has always been so key for these OpTic teams, like Scump especially, and I mean the rest of the guys are players that feed off the energy. And Scump also, shout out to him, he had a phenomenal championship Sunday again, despite them losing this series. He had certainly some phenomenal maps right here. So good to see him still performing up against some of the best teams. And of course, the big question is when they go back to LAN next stage, that is going to be, I think, even more exciting now, right? Because they should be able to springboard off this, have a pretty good group stage of the next major, get into a good spot at LAN, and then really see what they can do from there, which I think is what we're all hoping to see, and get some of these series in a LAN environment. The viewership's going to be even better than it already was. Wanted to touch, I guess, on the viewership real quick, if you guys weren't aware listening. I'm pretty sure it topped out at 135,000 during the Toronto Ultra Series, right at the death, which is honestly awesome. I did not think that series was going to do as well as it did. If they'd have gone on to beat that team and played you guys in FaZe, it probably would have, gone even higher than that. Of course, there's always a discussion about, okay, OpTic lose, the viewership drops down. That's just how it is. And a load of European viewers tuned out anyway because it was getting pretty damn late for us as well. But I wanted to, I guess, get your thoughts on it, Austin, because usually at this time in the season, the viewership isn't as good as this. Typically, right at the start of the season, the viewership's great. It drops off pretty significantly, stage 3, stage 4, and then around this time of the year. And then chaps, it picks up again. I honestly thought this was a really great sign, especially if OpTic continue to improve. I think the CDL, I don't know, it just feels to me we're on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, I was actually pretty impressed that that series got 135K. It's a little bit disappointing that it didn't translate into like the grand finals, but I feel like that's still like a real positive for the middle of the season like this, because usually these tournaments are where it's still on like a downward trend. So to reach that kind of peak right now before we go back to LAN is pretty insane. I think that's definitely a good thing. Great build up, and it'll be something to look forward to if OpTic continue to go deep into these tournaments.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's dive into their next team, and that is Toronto Ultra. We just discussed them. I mean, again, this team is just so good to watch. And the point I wanted to bring up about this team, of course, they finished the tournament. They lost 2 Game 5s to you guys. That was the only time they lost. I mean, some of the maps they would take out of you are incredible, like so down to the wire. And, obviously I want to get your thoughts. But the thing I wanted to kind of bring up is, who is the best player on this team? Because I don't know if you can say, and that's what I find so good about this team. Like a lot of teams in the league, of course, you guys, it's almost kind of up in the air as well. But there's always questions about most teams. You kind of know, okay, they've got a star player or whoever, and the rest of the guys are just the supporting cast. Toronto, it is not like that at all. You can say Cammy, certainly. You can say Bance as of late. I mean, if anything, Bance is like the 4th best player. I don't know. It just kind of seems like that, despite him being phenomenal. Because you've got, I mean, Insight's obviously been unbelievable as the main AR. Claynex, when he's going off, is got to be like the most fun player to watch in COD. I mean, he's up there with aBeZy. He reminds me a lot of aBeZy, to be honest. The way he flies around the map, popping 5 pieces like it's nothing. The shots he's hitting are absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, such a fun team to watch. I don't even know who their best player is. That's what makes it so exciting, because not only do they have some incredible talent, but their teamwork and cohesion is ridiculously good. They won some great series. They only fall short of the juggernaut that is Atlanta FaZe, and 13 wins in a row in Control as well was insane before you guys snapped them off that one. So, yeah, thoughts on this Ultra team? As you say, second best team in the world. I think I would be inclined to agree. Of course, they go the distance with OpTic, which kind of shows that OpTic right now also a very solid team. But yeah, thoughts on Toronto, man? What a squad.
So to answer the first question, personally, I think Cammy's the best on the team. I think it's like one of the best main ARs, but I personally think the way Cammy's performing on the flex, on that aggressive AR, yeah, I know. But he has a 1.3 in S&D, and
Oh
like
my
this
god.
past weekend, you just saw him like willing some of these series for them. Like I remember he went 26 and 13 on offense on one of the controls on raid versus it was before us. I think it was against Chicago. 26 and 13 in 2 offensive rounds. The man was literally putting on for this team. Like, but
So hard to do with an AR as
it's
well.
it's
On offense.
amazingly hard. But like honestly, I think Bance is the most valuable to the team, if that makes sense. I think he's been more of like the leader. I think he's like really changed how he performs. Mentally, he's back. He's re-engaged into the team. He has a 1.0, which is third best on the team. But he's very consistent. You know, he does a lot of the dirty work. He does a lot of like the routes. He carries bomb. He does all the dirty stuff for the team. So I honestly think like him being the leader and playing so consistent as like, you know, the fourth Slayer as he's supposed to be. Like he's not there to get a lot of kills. He's just there to be consistent, and that's exactly what he's doing. So I think it's very valuable that your fourth Slayer is so consistently good and can pop off just as much as any of the other players, which we saw in the grand finals versus us. But on the whole, the Toronto team, honestly, like I think outside of us, obviously they are the scariest team in the CDL. Um, to touch on, I mean, obviously everyone knows the control. While I think sometimes they play some of their situations unorthodox, they played it so together as a team that it just pays off. Like for instance on raid, they love going ring when like all they have left is the control point on poolside. They love going ring, they love going mid and flanking around you. Whereas most teams they'll say, "What's the first step? Get pool house," and then go from there. So they play really unorthodox, but they play as a unit and they know what the goal is, like each step is. So when you are so coordinated as a team, it doesn't matter. Like you're good as long as you're together and you're playing together. So great on control. And then you go to hardpoint or S&D. Honestly, like their mid round calls are scary. Like how like coordinated and how like put together this team is. For example, when we played them on Moscow, there was a round like traditionally like Toronto when they get stuck in these mid round decisions, they usually on Moscow they usually will group up mid and they'll either go Eskies or they'll go window and they kind of like that's how they like gauge it based on where you put the early pressure and we put them in a position to where they were gonna go window. We kind of stifled that, and then they went to go circle back mid, and we had Simp watching mid, and they saw him. And instead of just going to Eskies like they originally were going to do, like to fall into like that trap that we kind of had, they waited and like they caught out aBeZy that was going to flank them Eskies because that was like they usually just go Eskies and fly, but like that mid round adjustment to be like, oh, they saw us, wait, let's see what they do. Let's see if they make a mistake. Let's see if they overaggress. And then boom, they take advantage of that. They win the round. And it's like those mid round calls are so hard to get right and like so hard to do as a team. But like this team has it down pat. And it's like it's honestly it's crazy. Like I honestly think their S&D is like T1. Like that's what we're striving to be like. So hats off to them on that. And you know, obviously their hard point is lethal too. So the whole around this team is it's scary. They have a really deep map pool and they have a lot of talent. So I mean, I think they just have everything you could ask for.
It's so good to see them continue to perform as well, given that they win stage 2 major. It's all right. Can they repeat the trick? I mean, they could well have repeated the trick here. Of course, they fall short in the end. I would love to see what New York versus Ultra looks like right now. I think that would be an absolute banger. I don't know, you know, when we've had that as of late, but yeah, what a team! And let's discuss New York as well before we get on to the grand finals here, because they completely destroy Florida. Then they play you guys in I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of crazy series on the weekend. This might take the cake. I mean, the game 5, round 11, 1 versus 1. I don't think it really gets too much better than that. Simp versus Hydra was, I mean, it was just incredible, right? Given that all the discussion around Hydra has been, and people are calling it the French Simp or whatever, gets the chance to prove it. And you guys go down in the end. I mean, incredible series on the whole. Then, of course, you rematch in the grand finals, and Subliners fall short in this one. I do wonder what would have happened in that in the grand finals if Asim had won that 1v1 against Arcitys, just because if they win that control, that ties up the series 3-3, I think. And then you don't know what's going to happen at that point. And that'd have been a massive control for them to win. But still, New York looking so good. Clayster had a great weekend. I mean, Hydra is absolutely incredible, to be honest. There's no other way to put it. Mac had his moments. Asim did his job. one of those teams that you just don't want to ever play, I think, especially given that their hardpoint, do they get up to 11 or 10 or 11 wins in hardpoint in a row? That's I'm just so impressed at some of these streaks that we're seeing from teams in the middle of a season. Usually doesn't happen, and New York are one of the teams that can get it done, Austin.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, like if you look back last year, the longest win streak series-wise and map-wise came from Florida mid-season when they won the 3 tournaments within 4. So usually there are some hot teams right now, but to see like 3 or 4 right now be really hot is kind of weird. So I do think New York are the best hardpoint team right now. They are playing around Hydra, kind of going rogue and like kind of making plays, but they're also the other 3. One play that sticks out to me is in the Garrison when the other 3 literally weren't moving, and then Paco is just kind of like roaming, and like the fact that they're playing around that and allowing him to just play his game and then like being pretty fundamentally correct on the other end is pretty impressive. I just think they have issues in hard point control, as we kind of saw when we played them on Garrison, and how like they really struggled overall in the stage and control. So I think it just comes down to communication issues, honestly, and just not being in sync in those modes yet, which I'm pretty sure that will come in time. There are some like in control, usually you have to make pretty fast decisions, and you do have to play as a 4, so you got to make team decisions really quickly. So I'm sure there's probably some micro communications that are just being lost, and like as soon as they tighten that up, like they're gonna be scary in almost every mode. So super bright future, definitely top 3 team, definitely like continuing to get better, which is like really scary. And again, like hardpoint, like they are clear cut number 1. That's like what they're doing right now is what teams are striving to become. So they just have to figure out, honestly, like either S&D or control, just figure out one of the two and consistently, and they'll get there. I mean, you definitely saw signs of growth in the S&D. So I think that's an extreme positive. I think they're going to continue to get better at that mode individually, and just be a threat for the rest of the season.
I mean, every storyline is exciting right now, and New York are one of the best ones to me. They're always such a fun team to watch. I mean, you know that every time New York win a map, you know that it's going to cut to the player cams, and Clayster's going to be getting absolutely hyped. There's not many more. There's a lot of iconic things in Call of Duty. Clayster getting hyped like that after a match is certainly one of them. And honestly, losing to FaZe, there's no shame in that. In the same way that OpTic losing to Toronto, there's no shame in that, because
exactly, yeah.
phenomenal teams right now, especially losing in the fashion they did. You can't really ask too much more of them, to be honest, the way you guys are playing in the grand finals. And we've got to talk about your performance, right? Because you come off a difficult loss last time. Of course, there's certainly some discussion about the benefit, it seems, coming through the losers bracket. Last time Toronto won through losers, this time you guys win through losers, which is certainly very interesting. And obviously, did New York win the map 1? Did they take the Garrison in the end? I think in the grand final. So the momentum thing is obviously an interesting factor, but maybe plays some degree of a part. Just to touch on the individuals on FaZe, because usually Simp has a great event. He always has a great event. But this time, it really wasn't Simp doing too much. I mean, Cellium was incredible. I think aBeZy had his moments, and he certainly had a lot of takeover moments. But to me, it was between Arcitys and Cellium as to who should be the MVP of this event. Arcitys gets it in the end after a phenomenal grand finals, but Cellium had some crazy moments as well. Like often you'd look at the scoreboard, one of these two guys was double positive with the AR, which is it's not slaying that you've really got out of Arcitys until I guess the middle of this stage, which really turned it around. All the game modes looking good. Very, very tough to beat. That is just what I think is so scary about your team, to be honest, that it's never going to be an easy series against FaZe, regardless of the situation. And you have to play incredible Call of Duty to beat you guys, as Toronto did last major. And when you don't play perfect COD, then you guys are going to win. So yeah, I mean, congrats again, back to back grand finals now. I think Lionman did a stat like out of the 12 tourneys you've played as an organization, you've been in 10 of the finals. I think you've now won like 4 of the finals or something. Mm-hmm. So not the greatest record in finals, but you're getting there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first tournament that we've actually been able to use the losers bracket, so it's actually been pretty awesome on that front. Because usually we go in through the winners bracket and there's just no advantage, so it's kind of just like you're just on even footing. And like last year, I mean, this is what it is for the winners bracket, but most of them are just straight best of 5s online, so it is what it is. But honestly, like this stage, the the key improvement was just S&D. Obviously, like we're still a threat in a hard point. I think I think us and Toronto are the best two control teams. It's pretty much a coin flip between who's better. Um, I do think this Tupac, he made drastic improvements to our S&D game. He came in and started making changes to a lot of the stuff we were doing. The guys started focusing a lot more on that, and just the team as a whole just really focused on what other teams are doing correct, what the other teams were doing as a whole, so we could take advantage of that. So we took a little bit from every team on whichever maps they were doing correctly. We kind of made our own strategies. We kind of delved into our own strat book and revamped everything. So being able to be strong on all three modes again is what you need to do to win tournaments. You can't have a weak mode, because as soon as you get into that best of 9, you play 2 controls, so you can't be weak on control. You play 4 S&Ds, which to think about is ridiculous. You play 4 S&Ds, so if you're good at S&D and you can win 3 of those, you only have to win 2 other maps. So I think focusing on that was crucial to us winning this major, honestly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You have to say about Tupac. Like, does he take the lead in like in dealing with the team for all the search and destroy stuff? Because I don't know, maybe someone said it on stream or something there. Like, he kind of just works with the team for search, and then Crowder kind of takes a back seat on that type of stuff. Like, is that the arrangement you're going with? Because clearly it's worked out phenomenally. I mean, we talked about, of course, OpTic have been looking pretty good in searches of late, but they could have kept Tupac if they'd have wanted him, right? And it seems like he obviously has made drastic improvements. You guys, the aBeZy Tupac duo has been a thing for a number of years anyway, so the chemistry's certainly there. And I mean, that's the thing with you guys, right? You're not easy to beat in respawns, and all of a sudden being one of the best search teams in the game again, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean that's the formula to win. That's what Toronto did last major. They were beating us in the S&Ds. Whoever the best S&D team is has a huge advantage in the grand finals, and that's why Toronto just exposed us in the major too. But Tupac, he takes. I mean, like no one like solely works on it, so like the other 2 coaches are always there for the S&Ds, but Tupac takes the lead, and he's very vocal, and he's always there, through pretty much all the practice, anyways. So like everyone's pretty much hands on at all points. It's not like he takes a back seat in anything. So it's pretty cool just to have another person on the staff that's 100% putting 150 maximum effort into everything. So it's great to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I mean, that pretty much wraps it up for how the major's going. I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit of, well, maybe we'll do the power rankings in a second, but I wanted to touch on a little bit of drama that did come out between Kenny and Formal. I don't know if you saw this, but there was Los Angeles Thieves are doing their pre-show now. I thought it was interesting what he said. I mean, a lot of people, obviously I made the video on it, you know how it is. And people were saying that it was not like taken out of context, but he was kind of forced. I don't really know if he was forced into saying what he said. I mean, they were obviously pressing him for something spicy because Los Angeles Thieves understand content pretty well, which is obviously nice to see for the COD scene. But what he had to say was pretty interesting. Of course, that was before Thieves didn't look so great, and OpTic had a phenomenal run. But I just thought it was kind of interesting. Like, I guess we discussed the whole idea of who's the best player on Toronto, who's the worst player on Toronto. It's tough to say on OpTic. There was that question at least. That's what Kenny had to say. If you guys listening aren't familiar with it, Kenny effectively said, look, he was asked who's the worst player on OpTic. He said Formal, and he didn't just say Formal. He said, okay, Formal. The rest of the guys apart from Envoy are just playing for stats. They're just playing for kills, not necessarily playing to win as much as they should do. And of course, they went on to have a phenomenal week, but maybe that was very much true before the week actually kicked off. So interesting. I don't know if you had any thoughts on this, Austin, particularly, or with regard to exactly how that team is structured. In obviously, Formal's been such a good player for so many years, but is he technically the worst in OpTic at the moment? I guess you could argue so, but when a team's that stacked with talent, it's probably doesn't matter too much.
I don't know if it's fair to call Formal the worst, but I mean, I do trust Cap when he was saying stuff about like the fundamentals. Obviously, this team does put a lot of responsibilities on Envoy's plate to make the correct play all the time and to really help out the team, and not only S&D but in hard point and control. So they're a slaying heavy team. They rely a lot on winning their challenges. So I just think they were in a slump, down on confidence. So I don't know what's going on in their camp, so it's hard to say, but I wouldn't say Formal's the worst on their team. It's kind of hard to say, but I did think it was kind of funny that Formal went through and liked all the LAT tweets about after they lost. I thought that was just some this spiciness that got thrown in.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like Paul went through and both of Kenny's tweets where he said GG's like to whoever we lost, like GG's Florida we lost, and then GG's Toronto we lost. Formal like if you look through his likes the last several days, pretty much the only two tweets he's liked are with those two, which is just it's just
Yeah.
great stuff. And it just adds another little layer to whenever those two teams match up again, which hopefully will be very soon indeed. I believe it will be Friday when the groups for the next stage are announced. So no rest for the wicked, certainly, and we're straight back in about 10 or so days' time, 9 days from when this is going live. Let's do our power rankings before we finish off the show. Thought it was a good time to go through them because, it's kind of tough. I kind of thought I'd go through mine, got them up on screen right here. Maybe Omar can chuck something up on screen if you would like to. I think you made some interesting point before we went live with the show, Austin, the fact that maybe tiers make more sense than just clear rankings. We probably start at the bottom. I mean, I don't know who to choose over Paris and Seattle. I'm probably just going to say Seattle, given the fact that they haven't won a series this stage. Then probably Paris. Then it's kind of interesting because you get to this point where it's like you've got LAG, you've got Minnesota, and London looking probably better than both of those teams right now. I had Minnesota in 10th, but Paris and Seattle to me are like D tier. Then you get like Minnesota, LAG, London, maybe that are like C tier. And I had Minnesota in 10th just because LAG honestly have been looking better than I think as of late. But maybe I'll throw it to you, Austin, to give some thoughts on kind of the bottom half of your power rankings right now.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do tiers. Like I think I'll start with the bottom. Like my C tier is probably like LEG, Seattle, and Paris. Like I feel like pretty much a lot of people have that. I think a lot of people might have had like London in there before, but I feel like London's shown a lot of growth in the respawns and a lot of like potential to compete with the teams above them. So I kind of bumped them up into my B tier. Did you go over your next level?
I kind of got to there. If you'll take out the lead for this next part, and then I'll go.
Okay. So my B tier is pretty large because right now it just seems like any one of these teams can compete against each other. So mine is I have Dallas, LAT, Florida, Minnesota, and London in that order. So I still have a lot of like promise that Dallas can maybe turn this around in the near future. I do have them slightly above LAT right now just because I thought LAT would show us more by now, but it's kind of I'm in a wait and see mode to see if they can continue to grow. I have a lot of faith in their coaching staff, the duo that they have there. So I'm sure they'll be able to turn it around and start to rise up these rankings pretty fast. Florida and Minnesota, coin flip between those two. Mostly because I love Mike on this roster, and I think their S&D is going to get extremely, extremely scary. So I do have them slightly below just until we see, and then to round that out, I just have London there because while they're in ninth, I do think they have a lot of potential to compete with these other teams in respawns. So I had to put them
Yeah, I
in
think
there.
that's a good list for sure. I mean, I'd probably have Minnesota higher if I was ranking it off this change, which maybe I should have done, but I guess I was just doing current form. But I completely agree with the way that B tier was laid out. It's such an interesting array of teams because obviously we've got the top four we'll talk about in a second, but I don't know who to put fifth. Like, it feels like none of these teams really deserve the fifth spot to me. Like, Thieves, I don't think they've been looking good enough for me to call them like fifth best team, but I might have to give it to them just because Empire didn't even win a map this weekend.
So weird
At
for
least
that fifth
Thieves
spot.
won a good series, right? Yeah, exactly. I don't know what to do. And then Florida are too inconsistent for me to put up there. Like, them being seventh, something like that is probably about right for them because they can beat like the fourth best team. They can lose to the 11th best team. That's just kind of how it goes. But so they should be banging where they are. Then London, I think, definitely deserve a spot around about that point. They've been looking solid and have had decent results. So to me, it's like, okay, Thieves Empire, fifth and sixth. I mean, to me, I'd probably give Los Angeles Thieves. But as you say, they haven't really shown anything for me to, for them to be deserving of that spot. And, then let's go on to our top four, right? So I think the top four are pretty clear cut for most people. There is some question as to what number two should be. I think we kind of see things a relatively similar way. I guess talk about OpTic first, right? Because if OpTic had have made a longer run in this tourney, I wonder what would have happened here to these standings. Because if they'd have beaten Toronto, and then let's say they lost to you guys, then I don't know what happens here. Maybe I still put them fourth, but it certainly gets pretty interesting, right? And they could well have beaten Toronto here. But yeah, I think Chicago now moved to me into like the A tier. Personally, I have Atlanta as S tier right now. I just think that I don't know if I want to put another team in that category together. I maybe should put Toronto in there with them, but maybe that probably is deserved right now. But he goes beat them twice in the game 5. It's tough to say, but maybe Toronto do also deserve S tier with FaZe. But yeah, FaZe number 1, obviously that's clear cut. Then Toronto, New York, and Chicago, I kind of have in that A tier just because I think that the series between Toronto and OpTic was so close down to the wire that they probably deserve a similar ranking. And Chicago looked great, but clearly they haven't beaten some of these teams yet as of late. And then New York sitting there, and currently I have them at 3rd in a similar region to the rest of the guys. But to me, it's just incredible that, okay, FaZe are number 1, but it's close between them and Toronto. And then the other teams are also very tight. And then it's kind of like a line and then 5th down to the rest. At least that's how it seems to me. So I'll throw it to you, Austin.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I put us in Toronto in the S tier just because I feel like obviously I think our team's number 1, but with Toronto, they're good at all 3 modes. And when you're going to be put into a best of 9 in grand finals, you have to be good at all 3 modes. You can't just disregard one of them. So I think Toronto's super scary in every single mode, and that's why I put them up there with us. And they've also already won a major this season, so I just feel like right now, in the form that they're in S tier with us. In A tier, I have New York and Chicago. That is no slight at New York at all. I think they're amazing. I really think they're A plus, so on the verge. I just think they just need to sharpen up S&D just a little bit more. Obviously you saw what they did to us and Express in Miami, so I feel like they're so close. So I have them A plus, and then Chicago A minus. We just need to see more Chicago. It's been such a roller coaster with so many highs and so many lows that it's
you still don't really know, right?
There needs to be some consistency. You can't just disregard everything that's happened in the past just because they had a good weekend. So as we said after Toronto won in Major 2, you have to show it in Major 4 now. You have to show that consistency. You have to show that growth. You have to show us that it's not just you caught heat during the weekend. So I definitely think Chicago has a ton of potential. They've been working really hard, so I think they'll continue to show us that potential that they have.
Yeah, I agree with you on that front. OpTic are the one that it's the other teams have seen enough from to comfortably say that they're top 3. OpTic are in that kind of weird 4th spot where it's they can certainly be a B tier team. They can certainly be an A plus S tier team on their day, right? And that's what makes things so exciting. And of course, going into this Friday, we'll have the group selection show. I imagine, so of course, FaZe, you're going to be in Group A, New York will be in Group B, and then I guess you guys will put Toronto in the other side. New York will probably put OpTic in your side. So FaZe versus OpTic is going to be happening again in all likelihood. And then, of course, things get very interesting for them. We'll kind of see how other teams consider the power rankings to be. But any final thoughts, Austin, before we finish off the show after another phenomenal weekend? Congrats once again.
Yeah, thank you. I guess final thoughts. I said it after Major 1 and 2. I think it's just a travesty that we don't have an advantage coming from winners bracket. I might as well just take that time to talk about it. I felt horrible for New York. Veto advantage is nothing. People that think that's something, I guess you don't really know. Going into that grand finals, if you're better at S&D, huge advantage. So not having a veto in that just didn't matter. So yeah, we had to play our weakest map in Miami, but other than that, the other 3 maps, it's just whatever. And then in control, obviously we won both the controls. So I mean, there's no real super huge advantage in that. And then in hardpoint, we still get a veto. So New York are super good at Garrison and APOC, but they haven't really been super tested than the other 3. So we were able to get rid of arguably their best or second best map, and the only disadvantage was we had to play Garrison map 1. So I mean, we saw how that turned out. We lost the Garrison but won the next 3. So I think it needs to be addressed and changed. That the fact that a losers bracket team can go on a 2-0 run, win 2 matches going into a grand finals. I think it's crazy that you can go through winners finals and not get an advantage. So I guess, I mean, I'm happy we got to go to the losers and get a warm up match before the grand finals. But I just think you saw it last season with Dallas getting that 1-0 over us in the grand finals at COD Champs. Rightfully deserved. They deserved that 1-0. I mean, I just think a lot of people are calling for it now, and I hope that gets addressed in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with your take. I think it's pretty outrageous to be honest. Like 200 IQ play from Simp to throw the 1 versus 1 against Hydra to go down to losers and get the nice run on the Sunday, right? I mean, like what else? What else could he say on the matter? It's tough to
Yeah.
add more to
Well,
the
one other
fire.
thing is like COD's extremely momentum based, so like getting that head start is huge. And I did see people asking for like the double best of fives back, but I will say like we probably shouldn't see that back because analytically, like when let's say the losers bracket team wins that first best of five, like 50% of the fans usually go off, like leave before the second one starts because they think it's either over or they like don't understand. So like I don't want the double best of fives back, but I would. There has to be something because the veto advantages is nothing right now.
I agree with you on that. I think best of fives like the vast majority of the time the series were too boring to warrant it, and also you can barely ever predict when it's going to finish as well, which is kind of a challenge. And that's one of the other reasons why I think there's two reasons really why I really there's like 3 or 4 reasons actually why I really like the 1-0 advantage. First of all, because you bloody deserve it, right? You come from winners. And the second reason is you don't have 4 searches. I think 4 searches is
Take one
pretty
out.
ridiculous. Like get rid of 1 search, you're playing 3 searches, 3 hardpoints, 2 controls. That makes way more sense. And thirdly, as a European fan, 1 less map, baby. One team's only going to get 4 maps, therefore the games do finish at. It could have finished at 3 a.m. for us, and there wasn't even any technical delays, which sometimes happens. So I don't know. I think we'll leave it there. I think some great episode today. Some interesting takes certainly. I think you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did enjoy it, leave us all all the good stuff. You know how it goes. Like, subscribe, ratings, and of course, stay tuned for next episode. And it's going to be another phenomenal weekend of Call of Duty, I'm sure, coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So thanks for watching as always. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next time.